Hello and welcome to a new experiment on my channel. This time it's what if a billionaire invested in Brazil? Now you may be thinking Brazil is a bit of a weird country to do. You know, it's one of the best leagues in South America, one of the best leagues in the world really, if you think about it. However, it doesn't really compete with the European leagues. And so what I want this experiment to do is we pump a lot of money into the Brazilian leagues, and essentially we want to try and see if the reputation of a league increases so much and the team's reputation increases so much that a lot of European players, such as, Neymar, he may want to come back to Brazil, or perhaps Messi will want to come to Brazil, or a lot of these young talents in the Premier League will want to come to Brazil, Mbappe, for example, for PSG. See if they want to come to the Brazilian league instead because there's so much money there and there's so much reputation. And also I'd like to see if a lot of these Brazilian teams can consistently win the Club World Championships. Whoever wins the South American Champions League, essentially, which is the Copa Libertadores, essentially they go into the Club World Championships and they face against the winner of Champions League and the winner of Champions League across every single continent. And I'd like to see if a Brazilian team could be winning that consistently every year against European teams. So that is the premise of this experiment, and hopefully we can find out what happens. Before we get started though, I do want to say thank you very much. We have just hit 1,000 subscribers on my channel, which is absolutely mental. There's been some insane growth the past week or 2 weeks or so. So thank you very much to everyone who has subscribed recently and watched all the videos. We're going to be doing a Q&A, I think, soon. I think that'll be quite interesting to do. So if you've got any questions for me, leave them in the comments down below, and we'll make a Q&A soon and I'll answer as many questions as I can. Now, the Brazilian league is very different to other leagues, for example. Now, the Brazilian divisions are sort of split into two seasons. So the first division is the main one. That is what everyone sort of, that's kind of like the equivalent to the first division is the main one. That's the equivalent to, say, the Premier League, for example. As you can see here, it is the top rated division in South America, which is pretty cool, to be fair. The first division is important though, because if we look down here, continental qualification, the top 5 teams qualify for the Copa Libertadores group stage, 6th and 7th qualify for the second qualifying round, and 8th to 13th qualify for the equivalent of the Europa League, and I can't quite pronounce it off the top of my head right now, Copa Sudamericana, which is slightly easier than Libertadores actually. So a lot of teams do qualify for the continental competition, which is really cool. A lot of teams get in there. There's also quite a lot of prize money for whoever wins the league as well. So there is money in this league already. However, with the extra money that we're going to give these clubs, I reckon they could go on to compete internationally, which I think is the main aim of this, obviously. However, the Brazilian league is split into 2 seasons. So if we look at Santos, for example, this is Santos. If we look at their schedule, they've already played a lot of games already this season in the Sao Paulo state, which we can't seem to click on for some reason. We can click on there, which is good. So the Sao Paulo state, Brazilian leagues, half the season they play in the first division, which is a national thing, and then the other half of the year they play in regional divisions. So, for example, Santos are from Sao Paulo, the Sao Paulo region, so they play against a lot of teams in the Sao Paulo state championship. So that's a sort of mini league, a pre-season league, perhaps you could call it. However, these don't have any continental qualification or things like that, and the prize money is a lot smaller. So essentially, we're not too fussed about this. We are just fussed about the first division. So if you see a lot of results and fixtures for this, essentially ignore it in this, and it doesn't matter too much to us in this experiment. So back to the first division then, this is what we're going to be focusing on. If we look at the competition details, we can see that the current reputation is 158 out of a maximum of 200, which is pretty high, to be fair. That's a very high reputation. If we look at the English Premier League, for example, and this is where we're going to be stealing players from in the future, if we look at this competition, reputation is 174, so a lot higher than the Brazilian division. And I think that is the most reputable league in the world at the start of the game. Perhaps La Liga is slightly higher if that wants to come up. Where is La Liga? Of course, on this game it's called Spanish First Division because the license isn't quite there. But if we look though at competition details, 180, so it's slightly higher than the Premier League, which is quite a bit higher than the Brazilian league, which is what we're going to try and increase the reputation of, to try and get some of these stars from Real Madrid, Barcelona, Chelsea, Arsenal, Man United, Man City to go to Brazil instead. So all we're doing then essentially is going to edit club details. We'll go to finances. They're all professional clubs, and what we do is change the bank balance to 1 billion. We also change the transfer budget to 1 billion as well, so that's number 1 and then 9 zeros behind it. And then we also changed the wage budget to the maximum which that can be, which is 5 million. So it's slightly less than 1 billion, obviously. Quite a lot less, but it's enough at least for them to pay a lot of players. We're not going to change any of the facilities yet. But I think coming forward, perhaps we may put training facilities up to 20 as well, because that will also help attract players. But this first episode, at least, we're going to leave it as it is for now. So there we go. That is the premise of the experiment. I'll see you in 3 years' time. We're going to go 3 years into the future. Then we're going to have a little explore of what's happened, what kind of transfers been made, how they're doing in continental competitions and things like that. So we'll come back, evaluate, and see what has happened. So I'll see you in just a second in 3 years' time. So we're back now, 3 years into the future. It's actually 2 years, I suppose, if you go 2017 to 2019. But there's been 3 seasons played. So that's what we'll go for, 3 seasons. And I think a lot has happened in that time. So we'll go to the Brazilian First Division and see exactly what's gone on. Now, if we go onto there and we have a look at the reputation of the league, has it gone up all that much? We're still the top division, which is expected, really. If we look at competition details, though, reputation is now 158. Now, this is the point where I recorded this, the first part of this, a while ago now, and I can't remember what the reputation was. I think it might have been higher than that, which is a bit of a worry. We've put all this money in and the reputation has gone down. However, as I say, I can't remember. So you'll have to tell me in the comments if I'm right or wrong with that. But I think it has gone down a little bit, which is a bit of a worry. Not quite what we would have wanted there. But the winners over the past few years have been very, very different, which is quite interesting to see. However, I don't think there's a real name fix yet for the Brazilian league. I've not come across one yet. Because they're not licensed in the game, they haven't not had to have their real names, so they've got to have these initials essentially. So SEP is Palermus, I think it is. You can see on the badge a lot of them. So Palermus or Palmeiras, I suppose, is probably the correct way to pronounce it. If you thought my Welsh pronunciation was bad, well, wait till you see my Portuguese. That's going to be even worse. Botafogo won it in 2017 though, which is pretty cool. Congratulations to Botafogo there. And in 2018, SEC won it. Cruzeiro. So I guess they were champions. And actually, that's not the last season. The 2019 season just been, and looks like they've won it once again, actually. So for the first time in quite a while, I say quite a while, since 2013-14, SEC, who we've worked out were a Cruzeiro, have won it twice in a row, which is pretty good to see. If we look at the full league table then over the past few years, I will admit I'm not a massive Brazilian expert on Brazilian football and things like that, but you know, teams like Botafogo, Corinthians, Santos, Grêmio, is that Flamengo or Flamenco, I can't quite remember how they're pronounced, Fluminense, Atlético Mineiro, there's quite a few teams. I would say the teams I recognise, obviously the better ones, because that's how you hear about them. Once they're better, they get more reputation, you hear about them. So that's how I know about those teams. And the teams down here, Chapecoense finishing probably a little bit low down, maybe perhaps. That's Sao Paulo, I think, SPO. So they're finishing quite low down as well. But as I say, this is the base bit. Everyone's been given a billion, so they're all on the same level. So it's just now a matter of time before teams start to establish themselves. The 2018 season, Cruzeiro won it, obviously. Botafogo finishing second. Fluminense still up there. Santos still up there. Corinthians still up there. So I don't think there's been a huge change in how the league has been structured, obviously. I think the teams that are meant to be at the top pretty much are staying at the top. And in the season we've just had, any huge surprises there? Not particularly. Corinthians finishing quite far down the table for what they're usually getting. You know, they're usually more up there, aren't they? They're on the top of the table. So nothing too surprising in the leagues there, but the transfers is what we want to see mainly. If we go back to the 2017 season, of course, we want to see a lot of these European guys coming into Brazilian leagues and seeing if they can make it in Brazil, essentially. You know, if Brazil is becoming more and more a reputable league. In this first season, though, there's not a huge amount. There's 2 guys coming in from China, Elkson and Allen, who sound Brazilian themselves anyway. Elkson is Brazilian, and I presume Allen is also a Brazilian guy. Yeah, so it's not too important. They're coming back, I suppose, so that's kind of to be expected. We want to see some like French guys, English guys coming over. But a lot of money being spent, though. They're putting the money to good use. Santos spending 58 million on Elkson, and Allen being bought for 32, rising to 42 million. So a lot of money being spent. The 2018-19 season, then, the biggest transfer was a transfer out, actually. Vicinius Jr. from Flamenco. Again, I'm probably saying that wrong, so correct me in the comments, please, because I can't remember now. Moving to Real Madrid for 40 million, that's big. And Elkson actually moving straight across from Santos to Flamenco, 36 rising to 45 million. So Santos making a loss on him there, actually. Rafael, though, comes in from Lyon to Fluminense, but Rafael, again, is a Brazilian guy. So we're not seeing any Europeans coming over too much yet. Looking down, it's all Brazilian guys. I mean, Pato, Fernando, Rafael, Wallace. They're all Italian guys. Leo Baptistio, potentially, it could have been another South American person, but you know, he's Brazilian as well. So again, a lot of these Brazilian guys coming in, their reputation isn't changing too much. And then the season we've just had again, it just looks like more and more Brazilians are coming back. Richarlison from Watford, he's living there, but he's a Brazilian guy. So at least some of these Brazilian youngsters, though, like Richarlison, is coming back. He's only 22 years old. If he's coming back to Brazil, perhaps that's presenting him as a better opportunity to grow as a player in Brazil rather than Watford in the Premier League. So perhaps quite interesting. That's maybe something we can start to think about now. Again, Thiago Maia coming back from Lille this time to Botafogo. Again, a very, very young Brazilian player. So perhaps a trend we're starting to see now is that a lot of these young Brazilian guys are now coming in to these Brazilian clubs because I think it's better back home for them, for example. I think going forward, though, I think for next episode, we're going to go onto all of these teams and we're going to go to facilities and edit the facilities. Now, interestingly enough, Botafogo have 2020 training facilities and youth facilities, so I don't need to change that, but we'll change everyone to 2020 and see if that helps with the reputation, bring that up in the future a little bit like that. Right, Copa Libertadores then, again, probably pronouncing that slightly wrong. Again, like I said, South American languages, Spanish, Portuguese, not quite my cup of tea. But as we've seen the past few seasons, River from Argentina won it in 2017, but two Brazilian sides, Grêmio in 2018 and Corinthians in 2019, winning it, which means that they do go to the Club World Championships. Now, only Grêmio will see in this episode, see how they did. That's fantastic to see that Brazilian sides are winning it. It's the first time a Brazilian side has won it since Atlético Mineiro in 2013 and Corinthians in 2012. So it's good to see the Brazilian sides back on top. The money we've given them clearly is starting to work and things like that. But if we go and look over the past few stages, like if we look at the semi-finals and the finals, our Brazilian teams getting there. I'm going back in the years, back to 2017. If we look at the quarterfinals, for example, there's two Brazilian teams there, but four Argentinian teams, which isn't boding too well for us. Season afterwards, though, 6 Brazilian teams, which meant there were 4. The semi-final was all Brazilian, which is pretty cool, to be fair. And the season afterwards, 5 Brazilian teams there, with 3 of which getting through to semi-finals. So the money we're giving them clearly is working. It's helping them get to these later stages. Of course, a Brazilian team is always probably quite likely to get to the quarterfinals and semi-finals, but to have this many is pretty cool, and that's kind of what the money's doing. It gives them more opportunity for a Brazilian side to get into the Club World Championships, which is what we'll look at now. This is also a thing that we wanted to see if they would start to win. So Club World Championships, Juventus are the current holders, so Grêmio didn't win it this year because obviously it would have been last season's stuff that they came through in. So if we look at the past winners, Grêmio came third actually, which is pretty interesting. Tigres were the runners-up, so Grêmio didn't even get to the final. Usually it is just a European South American final. Every now and again, like in 2016, when Atlético Nacional from Colombia, are they from Colombia? Yeah, they didn't make it there. But if you look down, a vast majority of the time it is literally European teams mostly winning it, and South American sides coming as the runners-up. If we look at the fixtures though, where did it all go wrong for Grêmio? So they get put straight into the semi-finals actually, because there's a whole qualifying thing. So Oceania and Arabia playing like a playoff there, and then after that it goes into some more playoffs, and that's a little bit confusing. I mean, I'm not sure what that one is. I think that's the year before actually, which again is, it must be the year before, 2018 then, yes, again. So that's what happened there. UAE beating Auckland once again. After that, it's a bit confusing how this all works. You should just like a first round, second round thing. This is a bit confusing looking at the dates. Tigres then beat Cape Town because then North American sides come in against other sides, and Asia come back in against the Arabian sides that have qualified. So it's a slow process because obviously there'd be no point for like a European side going up against a UAE side in like the first round, for example. After that then, Tigres beat Grêmio 2-1. So Grêmio lose at their first hurdle, the semi-finals, where they beat Tigres 2-1 on aggregate. In fact, it wasn't the aggregate, it's one game, isn't it, of course. It was a close game actually, Tigres being very, very good there. But unfortunately for us, it did mean that Grêmio had to play in the third, fourth place against a Chinese side, against Tigres, but managed to get the win there. So that's a bit almost like backward steps there because they've not reached the final, which is kind of what they're expected to do. So not too good performances from the Club World Championships, so perhaps with better training facilities will start to improve their reputation and get some better players, and hopefully they'll be able to take on European teams. So that's it then for this episode so far. Obviously next time, I say, we'll improve some training facilities. Hopefully that'll do the reputation some good. Obviously, it's nice to see the Brazilian teams winning the Champions League in South America, so that's great. We're on track for that, but we're not on track for the Club World Championships and them winning there, and we're also not on track for European players coming over to South America and Brazil specifically to start playing their trade. So hopefully next time when we go 5 years in the future, we'll see more of that, which should be quite interesting. If you've got any comments and you want to let me know, if you want to see something else in this, like you want to look at some youth players, for example, let me know. I will do that for you. Brazilian national team, for example, we'll look at that. We'll look at international competitions as well at some point as well, 'cause that'd be quite cool. But thank you very much for watching. Please do drop a like on the video, subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll see you next time for more Brazilian billionaire action.